Please, no! Don't do this! Let me go!
Cold metal pressed against her throat before Noelle could scream. And Yoo Jun-seo, the man who had not once looked at her for longer than 3 seconds in 4 months of marriage, the man everyone in Seoul whispered was incapable of loving a woman. That man walked through the penthouse door and went completely, terrifyingly still. Not afraid. Calculating. The kind of stillness that didn't belong in a man. The kind that belonged in something predatory deciding exactly how much destruction it was willing to cause. The intruder pressed the blade harder. "Don't come closer," he hissed in Korean. "I'll do it. I swear I'll do it." Jun-seo's response came in English, and his voice was so cold it could have frosted glass. "You have 3 seconds to take that knife away from my wife's throat before I show you exactly what I'm capable of." The man laughed, nervous, shaking. The kind of laugh that already knew it had made a catastrophic mistake. The great Yoo Jun-seo. "Everyone says you're soft. Everyone says you don't feel anything. Everyone says..." He never finished the sentence. Noelle didn't even see Jun-seo move. 1 second, he was standing near the door, still in his coat, still holding his keys. The next, the knife was skittering across the marble floor, and the intruder was flat on his back, and Jun-seo's hand was wrapped around the man's throat with a grip that did not negotiate. "You put a weapon against my wife's skin." Each word landed like something final. "You put your hands on what is mine. Give me one reason why I shouldn't end this right now." Jun-seo. Noelle's voice came out broken, barely recognizable as her own. She was terrified, not of the man on the floor anymore, but of her husband, of the stranger wearing his face, of the thing looking out through his eyes that she had never once seen in 4 months of careful, cold coexistence. His gaze snapped to hers, and what she saw there stole every word she had left. Possession, fury, fear, and, underneath all of it, something raw and desperate and unguarded that made her knees go weak because Yoo Jun-seo did not do unguarded. Yoo Jun-seo did not do desperate. "Are you hurt?" He didn't release the intruder, but his voice dropped when he spoke to her. Gentled, like she was something breakable. "Noelle, answer me. Did he hurt you?" She shook her head, mute, because what was she supposed to say? How was she supposed to make sense of any of this when just this morning he had barely acknowledged her existence over breakfast? When he had walked past her in the hallway like she was a piece of furniture he'd learned to navigate around? Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone in the building must have heard the commotion and called, but Jun-seo didn't seem to hear them. He was staring at Noelle like she was the only fixed point in a world that had tilted sideways. Like everything else, the sirens, the man still gasping beneath his hand, the billion-dollar empire waiting for him, across the city, had simply ceased to matter. "You're shaking," he said. He finally released the intruder, who rolled sideways coughing, and then Jun-seo crossed to her in 3 long strides, and his hands were on her face, tilting her head back, running over her shoulders, her arms, checking for injuries with a thoroughness that felt almost clinical, except that his hands were trembling, except that his jaw was set so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. "Tell me he didn't hurt you. Tell me right now." "I'm fine." Noelle's voice shook. "Jun-seo, I'm fine. But you were supposed to be in Tokyo. You left 2 days ago. The merger, the deal, you said it would take a week." I felt it. The confession tore out of him like it had been held under pressure for a very long time. I was sitting in my hotel room. I had just gotten off the phone with the board, and I felt this panic that wasn't mine. Like someone was squeezing my chest. Like I couldn't breathe right, and I just knew. I didn't have a reason I could put into words. I just knew something was wrong with you. His forehead dropped to hers. The vulnerability in that single gesture nearly destroyed her completely. So I left. Chartered a private flight. Flew back in the middle of the night because I had to. Because I could not sit in that hotel room knowing something might be happening to you and do nothing. But why? Noelle whispered, and her voice cracked right down the middle. Why would you care? This isn't real. You married me for appearances. You didn't even want a wife. You wanted a solution. You told me that yourself. So why would you? Everyone has been wrong about me for years. His voice was rough, stripped of its usual precision. I let them be wrong because it was easier than the truth. But you are my wife, Noelle. Mine. And anyone who threatens you is threatening me. I don't care what they believe. I don't care what stories they tell. Touch what's mine and I will burn everything down. The police burst through the door then, and the moment shattered like glass. But as Jun Seo moved away to speak with the officers, as Noelle sank onto the white sofa with a blanket someone pressed into her hands, all she could think was, who is this man I married? Because this story does not start with knives and confessions and flights through the night sky. This story starts 5 months earlier, in her parents' cramped apartment in Lagos, where Noelle's entire future was quietly being sold to save her family from ruin. And if you want to understand how a Nigerian woman and a Korean billionaire went from a cold transaction to something so consuming, it rewrote both of their lives, you need to stay until the very end. Because what happens next will wreck you, heal you, and make you believe that some love stories are born in the most impossible places. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support is what keeps these stories coming. Now let's go back to where it all began. The thing about being the eldest daughter was that you inherited responsibilities you never once asked for. Noelle had understood this for as long as she could remember. She'd grown up watching her mother stretch money that never stretched far enough, watching her father's shoulders bow further every year under the weight of a debt that kept growing no matter how hard he worked. She'd understood early that her dreams were not entirely her own, that they existed only as long as they didn't cost the family anything it couldn't spare. But she had never imagined it would come to this. His name is Jun Seo, her father said, not meeting her eyes. Korean, 34 years old, CEO of U Global. His net worth is somewhere that I cannot even say the number without my voice failing me. Noelle stood frozen in the doorway, still in her work clothes, still holding the rejection letter from the graduate program she had spent 2 years working toward. Her mind refused to accept what her ears were clearly hearing. Papa. Her voice was very quiet. What are you saying to me right now? I'm saying he's agreed to marry you. Her father finally looked up. The shame in his eyes was heavier than any anger could have been. In exchange, his company clears our debts. Every single one. You'll live in Seoul, Noelle. You'll want for absolutely nothing. The room tilted. You are selling me. Don't be dramatic. Her mother swept in from the kitchen, sharp and composed the way she always was when she had already made peace with a decision everyone else was still catching up to. This is an opportunity. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Do you have any idea how many young women would throw everything away for a chance like this? Then find one of those women. Noelle's voice rose, despite everything she was doing to hold it steady. I don't want to marry a stranger. I don't want to leave Nigeria. I have a life here. I have plans. What plans? Her father stood now, and his voice cracked under the weight of his own exhaustion. Tell me, Noelle, what exactly do you have here? A degree that has gotten you nowhere because there are no jobs. A boyfriend who cannot take you somewhere decent for your birthday. Dreams that cannot pay your mother's hospital bills or your brother's school fees. That is not fair. Fair? Her father's laugh was so bitter, it barely sounded like him. Nothing about any of this is fair. But I am out of options. Every door has closed. The investors backed out. The bank has given us 30 days before they take everything. This house, your brother's future, your mother's treatment, all of it. Unless I find money I don't have. And Jun Seo has offered it in exchange for marriage to you. Noelle felt the tears burning, but refused, absolutely refused, to let them fall in front of them. "And what does he get?" she asked, forcing her voice to stay even. Why would a man with that kind of money need to buy a wife from Lagos? What is he actually getting out of this? Silence. The particular kind of silence that meant her parents were holding something back. "Mama." Noelle looked at her mother directly. "Why does he need a wife?" Her mother's lips pressed thin. "There are rumors about him in Korea, about his preferences, about who he is. He needs a wife to stop the speculation. You need security. It's a fair arrangement." The understanding hit Noelle like cold water thrown directly in her face. "He's gay." She said it quietly. "You are marrying me to a gay man who needs a cover. That is what you're telling me." "We don't know that for certain," her father said quickly. "But you suspect it. And you signed the papers anyway." Noelle stared at him. "You signed before even asking me, didn't you?" Her father sat down heavily and said nothing. "The contract is already finalized," her mother said. "The first payment transferred yesterday. You leave for Seoul in 3 weeks." The floor fell away beneath Noelle's feet. "I was going to start my master's program," she said, and her voice finally broke on those words. "I had a plan. I had a whole plan for my life. And your plan needed money we don't have," her mother said. "Flat, final, money that Jun Seo is offering." Noelle left the room before they could see her cry. She sat on the edge of her childhood bed in the dark and looked at a photo on her phone. Jun Seo at some gala, surrounded by people, beautiful in the way that cold things were beautiful, and she thought, this is my life now. 3 weeks later, she boarded a flight to Seoul, and everything she had planned for herself dissolved somewhere over the clouds. Seoul hit her like a physical force. The cold was different here. It had teeth. The airport was a cathedral of glass and steel and signage she couldn't read. And everywhere she looked, people moved with a precision and purpose that made her feel like she was standing still in a world that didn't have time to notice her. Her best friend, Chiamaka, held her hand through customs, having refused every argument Noelle had made against her coming. "I am not sending you into that man's world alone. Don't even waste your breath." Secretary Park met them at arrivals. Slim, formal, a slight bow, and a sign with her name. "Miss Noelle. Mr. Yu sends his regrets. He has been detained by an urgent matter and could not collect you personally. The car is waiting." Of course he couldn't, Noelle said pleasantly. Even meeting the woman he'd paid to marry came second to business. The drive through Gangnam was surreal. Seoul looked like the future, all neon bleeding into rain-slicked streets, towers that seemed to want to pierce the sky, everything moving in that same relentless, purposeful rhythm. It was beautiful in an overwhelming way, the kind of beautiful that didn't leave room for you. The building they stopped at looked like it cost more than Noelle's entire neighborhood back home. "Mr. Yu's residence," Secretary Park said. "Penthouse. Level. Your belongings will follow shortly. Mr. Yu will meet you for dinner this evening at 8. The restaurant requires formal dress. A car will collect you at 7:30. Then he left. And Noelle stood in the middle of a penthouse that was floor-to-ceiling glass and chrome and white surfaces so pristine they looked like they'd never been touched, and thought, this is a museum. I am going to be living in a museum. "Noelle." Chiamaka grabbed both her hands. "We can still go, right now. We figure something else out. You don't have to." "I have to." Noelle said it with a steadiness she had worked hard to locate inside herself. The money was transferred. The debts were paid. The contract existed. Let's just see who this man actually is. She found out at dinner. She had been sitting alone at the restaurant table for 43 minutes when he walked in. The other patrons, wealthy, Seoul elite, designer everything, had been throwing her pitying glances for at least 15 of those minutes. The waiters had developed a particular hovering quality that was worse than being ignored. Humiliation moved through Noelle's veins like something heated, and she was reaching for her purse. She was genuinely about to leave when the restaurant went quiet. Not silent, just recalibrated. Yoo Jun-seo moved through the space like he owned it, which he quite possibly did. Tall. Sharper in person than any photograph had managed to capture, like someone had taken exceptional bone structure and cut away everything soft until only the essential remained. Dark eyes that swept the room the moment he entered, cataloging it with the efficiency of someone who always knew every exit. They landed on Noel, and for just a fraction of a second, half a breath, barely anything, something crossed his face that he locked away so quickly she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. He reached her table, sat down. "You look cold," he said. "They keep this restaurant too cold. I'll have it adjusted for next time." Noelle stared at him. "You are 43 minutes late," she said. "I'm aware. The board meeting ran significantly over." "You are 43 minutes late," she repeated slowly, "to meet the woman you paid to marry. And your first words to me are a comment about the room temperature." His jaw tightened. Barely perceptible, but she caught it. Noelle picked up her purse with perfect, controlled calm. "Please tell Secretary Park to arrange my return flight. Tell my father the arrangement is canceled. I would genuinely rather go home and face whatever consequences come than spend my life with someone who cannot extend basic human respect to a person he is asking to give up everything." She pushed back her chair. She made it 4 steps. "Noelle." His voice stopped her. Not commanding, not the cold authority she expected. Something else, something that cost him. "Please." She turned slowly. He was standing, and in the rigid, careful set of his shoulders, she could see, unmistakably, a man fighting himself. A man who did not ask for things, encountering the necessity of asking. "I owe you an apology," he said, "not an explanation, an actual apology. I was wrong, and the briefest pause, like the word required effort. "I am not often wrong, which means I am not well practiced at this. Please sit down. Let me try again." Noelle studied him for a long moment. Everything in her said to keep walking. She sat down, not because she forgave him, because underneath the coldness, underneath the perfect surface of him, there was something that looked exhausted, something that looked like a man who had been alone in his own precision for a very long time and had stopped noticing that it was a kind of pain. 5 minutes, she said. "Explain to me why I shouldn't leave." He released her immediately, not that he'd touched her, and sat back down, and something about the way he collected himself, piece by piece, was oddly fascinating. "I was late. Because my board has been in open revolt since I announced this marriage," he said finally. "They consider you unsuitable. They have been vocal about it, and tonight's meeting was an attempt to pressure me into reconsidering." "Unsuitable," Noelle repeated, very evenly. "Because you're Nigerian. Because you're not what they constructed in their minds as appropriate for me. Because this marriage disrupts a narrative about my life that they had decided was true and preferred." He looked at her directly. "I criticize your arrival time because I defaulted to the only mode I'm actually competent in, business mode. It was wrong. I'm sorry. You're not good at that word. No, I'm not good at most things that require softness. Which is, I'm aware, a considerable problem given the arrangement we're both in." His hands tightened briefly on the tablecloth. "The rumors about me have been destroying business relationships. International partners are uncomfortable. The board questions my judgment. I am exhausted by defending myself against things that are not true." "Are they true?" Noelle asked quietly. "The rumors?" His eyes met hers and held. "No," he said, "they are not true. But I have found it easier over the years to allow people to believe what they want to believe rather than explain myself to people who have already decided what I am. That's a lonely way to live." Something moved across his face, quick and gone. "That is my business," he said. "Fine," Noelle said. "Then here is my business, my terms. In public, I will be exactly what this marriage needs me to be. I will learn Korean. I will wear the right things and smile at the right people and give you absolutely everything you've paid for in terms of appearances. But in private, Junseo, you treat me like a human being. You show up when you say you will. You do not make me invisible inside my own home. You do not walk past me like I'm furniture you haven't decided where to put yet. Can you do those things? He was quiet for long enough that she thought he was going to refuse. Yes, he said. Those are reasonable terms. Good. Noelle picked up the menu. Then we have a deal. And you may call me Noelle, not Miss Adeyemi. If we're going to be married, we can at least use each other's names. Noelle, he repeated, like he was memorizing the weight of it, like it required the same care he gave to contracts. She told herself the flutter in her chest was hunger. She told herself that very firmly. Later, over the main course, Junseo said, I know you hold a degree in business administration from the University of Lagos. I know you speak English, Yoruba, and Igbo fluently. I know you had plans for an MBA before your family situation changed. I know your favorite meal is jollof rice, which will be difficult to find authentically here, but I have located a West African restaurant in Itaewon that the owner from Accra runs, and several people whose opinions I trust have said it comes close. Noelle lowered her fork, slowly, and looked at him. You researched me. I research everything. It's how I built what I've built. You missed something, she said. My dreams are not dead. They are delayed. I will play your wife, Junseo. I will do this properly. But I will not disappear inside this arrangement. And when it ends, when you no longer need me, I am getting my life back. When it ends, he repeated. And something in his voice was strange. You're already thinking about the exit, aren't you? He was quiet for a moment. Number 1. I don't do anything halfway. If I am getting married, I intend to stay married. Divorce would create more problems than this arrangement solves. So I'm trapped forever in a loveless marriage, Noelle said, with a brightness that didn't quite reach her eyes. What a fairy tale. Love is inefficient, Junseo said flatly. What we have is better. Clear terms, defined expectations, no emotions to complicate the structure. Noelle looked at him across the table. This man who had reduced love to an inefficiency and felt something she hadn't expected. Not anger, recognition. Here was someone as trapped as she was, just in a completely different kind of cage. What a lonely way to live, she said, again, quietly, almost to herself. He didn't answer. When he drove her back to the penthouse that night, Junseo walked her to the elevator with the stiff formality of a business associate concluding a meeting. The wedding is in 3 weeks. A planner has been hired. You will have fittings, Korean language lessons, etiquette coaching, and media preparation. It will be intensive. I can handle intensive. I believe you can. A pause. Something shifted in his expression, brief and unreadable. Thank you for not walking out of the restaurant, for giving this a chance despite how inadequate I am at being a person. Before Noelle could respond, the elevator doors closed. She rode up to the penthouse alone, wrapped in the silence of a city that didn't know her name, thinking, this is my life now. And not knowing yet that loneliness was about to become the very least of her problems. The wedding was a spectacle that cost more than most people would earn in several lifetimes. 300 guests, most of whom Noelle had never met. A ceremony so precisely orchestrated, it felt more like a performance than a beginning. Camera bulbs from media outlets Junseo's publicist had hand-selected flashed until Noelle saw spots. She wore a gown that had been fitted to her body by 4 different people over 2 weeks, and she smiled until her face ached with the effort of it. And through all of it, Junseo stood beside her like something carved from expensive stone, his hand on her waist only when cameras were present, his expression immaculate and perfectly empty. At the reception, his business associates congratulated him with barely concealed curiosity. their eyes sliding to Noel with the particular assessment of people trying to understand a decision that didn't make sense to them. The Korean socialites, who had spent years angling for his attention, looked at her with a contempt so refined it almost passed for courtesy. Noelle smiled and nodded and played her role and thought about absolutely nothing. "You're doing very well," Junseo murmured during their first dance. His hand on her back was precisely placed. Impersonal as a handshake. "The press will write exactly what we need them to write. I'm so pleased my performance is meeting expectations," Noelle said sweetly. Quiet enough for only him. His jaw tightened. "That isn't what Isn't it?" She met his eyes. "Isn't that all this is tonight?" He didn't answer. He held her through the remainder of the dance with careful, professional distance. And when it ended, he disappeared into clusters of business partners. And Noelle stood alone, among strangers, in the middle of her own wedding reception, and understood exactly what the next years of her life were going to cost her. That night, back in the penthouse, Junseo walked her to her bedroom door. "You did well today," he said. "Get some rest. I have an early morning." "Junseo." She stopped him before he could leave. "Can I ask you something?" He turned, guarded. "The rumors. Are they true?" The silence between them stretched long and careful. "Would it matter if they were?" He said finally. "I want to know what I'm actually dealing with. I want to know if this," she gestured between them, "will always be exactly this. Nothing. I want to know if I'm supposed to just accept that." Something crossed his face. Pain, she thought, though it came and went so fast she couldn't be sure. "What do you want me to tell you, Noelle? That I'll fall in love with you? That this arrangement becomes something beautiful because you want it to? I can't promise you things I don't know how to deliver. I don't know how to be what people need. I'm not asking you to love me," she said quietly. "I'm asking if you'll ever actually see me. Not as a solution to a problem, not as an arrangement, as a person." He looked at her for a long, careful moment. "I see you," he said, his voice lower, rougher than usual. "More than you know. But seeing someone and knowing what to do about it are two entirely different things." Then he was gone, and Noelle stood alone in the hallway, her heart doing something complicated in her chest, thinking, who is this man? The first month of marriage was ice. Separate schedules, separate meals, separate silences that settled over the penthouse like weather. Junseo was gone before dawn and returned after dark, and on the rare occasion their paths crossed, he was impeccably, exhaustingly polite, in the way that people were polite to strangers in elevators. Noelle built herself a life in the margins of his. She enrolled in Korean language classes 3 mornings a week. She resumed her MBA coursework online. She learned Seoul street by street, subway line by subway line, going out alone with a translation app, and a stubbornness that refused to be defeated by circumstance. She found the West African restaurant in Itaewon and introduced herself to the owner, a woman from Accra named Ifua, who became the first real friend she made in the city. She called Chiamaka every evening and told her everything was fine. "You are miserable," Chiamaka said flatly during one of their video calls. "Noelle, I can see it on your face. I have known your face for 26 years. I'm adjusting. It takes time. He treats you like furniture. He treats me like a business partner," which is what I agreed to. "That's not what you agreed to, and you know it." Chiamaka leaned closer to the camera. "You agreed to be treated like a human being? Is he doing that?" Noelle looked away. "I'm fine, Chiamaka." She wasn't fine. She was slowly disappearing inside a life that had her name attached to it but fit her like someone else's clothing. The crack started in the 2nd month. Noelle was in the kitchen at 6 in the morning, making herself tea, something small and routine to anchor the day, when Junseo appeared. He looked different. Collar open, jacket discarded somewhere, exhaustion carved visibly beneath his eyes in a way his usual immaculate presentation never allowed. He looked like a person, a tired, fraying at the edges person. "You're up," he said. "I live here," Noel said. He moved to the coffee machine, and the silence between them was the particular kind that happens when both people know they should say something and neither knows where to begin. "I didn't mean to. I know you live here. Do you?" Noel set down her mug with careful control. "Because Jun Seo, I have been here 2 months. And I still feel like an expensive ghost. I don't know what drawer the spare keys live in. I don't know your schedule beyond what Secretary Park sends me. I don't know if you have friends or allergies or anything that makes you a person and not just a name on a contract. You walk past me in the hallway like I'm a piece of furniture you've decided to ignore. That is not what you agreed to." He turned to face her fully. Something moved through his expression that was too fast and too complicated for her to read. "I don't know how to do this," he said. Not defensively, just plainly, like he was presenting her with a fact he'd already made peace with. "I have run a company since I was 28. I know exactly how to manage people, how to read rooms, how to move the pieces of a negotiation into the positions I need them in. I don't know how to—" He stopped. "Be with someone," Noel said. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Then start smaller," she said. "Dinner. Tonight. Here. No phones. No Secretary Park interrupting with urgent things. Just 2 people sitting at a table eating food and speaking to each other like human beings. Can you manage that one thing?" A silence. "Yes," Jun Seo said. He came home at 7:30. And he brought food from the Itaewon restaurant she had mentioned once, in passing, 3 weeks before, that she had been completely certain he wasn't listening to. He had heard every word. That dinner was the first time she heard him actually laugh. It was small, reluctant, caught off guard by her description of the look the barista had given her when she'd attempted to order her coffee in Korean and had apparently asked instead for something entirely different that she still didn't understand. But it was real, the kind that reached his eyes before he could stop it, and then retreated almost immediately, like he wasn't sure he'd been given permission. "You should do that more often," Noel said. "Do what?" "Look like you're still in there. Behind all of it." Jun Seo went very still. "Most people don't notice," he said finally. "I notice everything," Noel said simply. "It's a problem I've always had." He looked at her across the table in the penthouse that was slowly, almost imperceptibly, beginning to feel less like a museum. And something in his face shifted in a way that was different from his usual, carefully managed expressions. Something that looked like the beginning of actually seeing her back. "Yes," he said quietly. "I'm beginning to understand that." The weeks that followed were made of small things. Jun Seo started leaving notes when he had to be gone early. Practical at first, almost comically so. "Meeting in Busan. Back Thursday. There is food in the lower refrigerator." And then gradually, almost despite himself, something else. "Your Korean pronunciation is improving. I overheard you correct Secretary Park yesterday." He was embarrassed for the rest of the afternoon. "Well done. And then, I thought about what you said regarding the Itaewon market. We should go on Sunday if you want." Noelle saved every single one. She didn't ask herself why. She started keeping his coffee the exact way he took it, ready before he came downstairs. Started knowing which news program he wanted in the mornings. Started recognizing the difference between the silence that meant a deal was going well and the silence that meant it wasn't. They were learning each other in the margins, in the quiet spaces between what they had agreed to be. And neither of them said anything about it, because naming it might have broken whatever fragile, growing thing it was. And then 3 months into the marriage, everything broke open. Noelle woke at 2 in the morning to a sound that wasn't right. By the time her mind registered the wrongness of it, her bedroom door was already open. There was a man in the dark, and he was desperate in the way that made people dangerous, and he had a knife. She screamed Jun Seo's name, once. A pure reflex, reaching for the one person in the building who wasn't supposed to care. And then the man had her arm, and she was being pulled into the living room, and she was thinking clearly enough to think, Junseo is in Tokyo. Junseo is in Tokyo, and no one is coming. And then the front door opened. Later, after the police left, after statements were given and the intruder was gone and the penthouse was quiet in that hollow way that follows catastrophe, Noelle sat wrapped in a blanket on the sofa, and Junseo sat beside her, not across the room, not at his careful professional distance, beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his arm against hers. The rumors, she said, because she needed to know. Tell me the truth, right now. He exhaled. No, they were never true. Not once. Then why did you let people believe? Because, he said, the way he always said difficult things, choosing each word with care, if people believed I was incapable of feeling things for women, they stopped expecting me to feel things at all. And I had decided that was preferable. He looked at his hands. My parents loved each other the way fires love oxygen. Completely. Destructively. There was nothing subtle about it and nothing safe. By the time it burned out, it had taken everything with it. I watched that and I thought, no, I will not be that. I will build things instead of feeling them. I will be in control. And then, Noelle said softly, and then you moved into my home. Something in his voice changed, got quieter, more careful. And you were everywhere. Laughing in my kitchen, learning my language, arguing with Secretary Park about scheduling, leaving your textbooks on the table I use for contracts. And I didn't know what to do with you. I tried to maintain distance. I tried to keep everything exactly as agreed. I tried running, she said. Yes. Barely a whisper. Running. Junseo. Noelle turned to look at him directly. I didn't come here expecting love. I came because I had no choice. But somewhere between the notes you left and the coffee, you quietly learned how I take it. And the fact that you flew back from Tokyo in the middle of the night because you felt something was wrong. Her voice cracked. I cannot pretend this is just an arrangement anymore. I tried. I can't. What is it? Then? He asked. I don't know, she said honestly. But I want to find out. If you do. Junseo was quiet for a long time. Long enough for the whole glittering skyline of Seoul to shift outside their window. Then he reached over and took her hand. Held it like it was the most ordinary thing in the world and also the most terrifying thing he had ever done. I'm not good at this, he said. I know, I'll work too much. I'll forget to say things I should say. I'll go quiet when what you need is for me to speak. And I'll probably never stop defaulting to logic when what you actually need is something else entirely. And I will call you on every single one, Noelle said. Every time. And you will have to actually hear me when I do. Yes. His grip tightened. That is a deal I can make. And Noelle leaned her head against his shoulder. And Yu Junseo, who had not allowed himself to be held by anyone in longer than he could clearly remember, went completely still, and then exhaled like he was, setting down something he had been carrying for years. The transformation was not instant. It was slow and real and beautifully imperfect. He still worked brutal hours. He still went quiet at the wrong moments, still stood at the window sometimes with all his walls back up, like he'd forgotten he was allowed to put them down. He still occasionally looked at her like he didn't know what to do with the fact that he felt things. But he tried. Every day. Visibly, imperfectly, with the same focused determination he gave to everything. He tried. He took Sundays off, something his assistant said, stunned, had never happened in 6 years. He and Noelle found a street market in a neighborhood tourists hadn't yet ruined, and they went every week. She taught him which vegetables reminded her of home. He told her what each Korean sign said. It was small, and it was ordinary, and it was the best part of every week. They had their first real fight 3 weeks after the break-in. Something about a presentation, Noelle's MBA project, which she had been working on for 2 months and which he had promised to listen to, and then genuinely forgotten in the machinery of an emergency acquisition. She didn't yell, she went quiet, which was worse. You did it again, she said. I know. You said, I know what I said. He set everything in his hands down. All of it. I know exactly what I promised, and I broke it. You deserve more than my apology, but I'm giving it anyway because I mean it, and because I am going to spend a very long time learning to mean it better. He looked at her directly. Tell me what you needed tonight. Not so I can apologize for it. Because I want to actually know. Noelle looked at him. Don't do that, she said softly. Do what? Be more than I prepared for. It makes it extremely difficult to stay angry at you. The corner of his mouth moved. That was not entirely accidental. She laughed, despite every intention not to. He pulled her in, and she let him, and they stood, there in the kitchen, in the middle of the argument, until it became something else entirely. 5 months in, Jun Seo took Noelle home to Nigeria. Not for the press, not for appearances, for her father, who had sold his daughter and needed to understand what she had become in the care of a stranger. Her father opened the door and looked at them. At the easy way, Jun Seo's hand rested at the small of her back, at the way Noelle turned to say something, and he bent his head down to catch it, at the specific gravity they had with each other. And something shifted in his face. Later, when Noelle was in the kitchen with her mother, and her laughter was audible through 2 walls, Noelle's father sat across from Jun Seo and said, You love her. Actually love her. Yes, Jun Seo said. 1 word. No performance, just the plain truth of it. Her father looked at the floor. I sold her, like she was something I owned. I told myself I was saving the family, but I nearly broke her to do it. You were desperate, Jun Seo said. Desperation makes people make choices. Their love can't quite survive intact. I understand that. A pause. But she didn't break. She is the strongest person I have ever known. That is not something I did. That is what she brought here. Her father wiped his face. Take care of her, he said. Every day, Jun Seo said, for the rest of my life. That night, lying in Noelle's childhood bedroom, she asked quietly, Do you ever regret it? How we started? Never. He pulled her closer. Because every single day, I get to choose you now. Not because of a contract, not because of an obligation, because I want to, because I love you. And that, Noelle, that means everything. She kissed him in the dark of the room where she'd once cried herself to sleep over this arrangement and thought, this is how it was supposed to work all along. Not perfect from the beginning, just willing to become perfect together. 1 year after a contract was signed in shame, U Global held its annual gala. All of Seoul's most powerful people were there. The press was circling. And Noelle stood beside her husband in a gown the color of dark garnets. And she was not nervous, not invisible, not borrowed. She was herself. During his speech, the one about earnings and growth and projections, the one he delivered every year with the same measured authority, Jun Seo stopped. The room waited. He looked at Noelle. I want to say something that isn't in the prepared remarks, he said. His voice was steady. His eyes were not. A year ago, I entered a transaction. I was very precise about what it was. Very certain I understood exactly what it would cost me and what it would give me in return. He exhaled. I was wrong. Because the woman I married refused, every single day, to let me stay comfortable inside my own distance. She pushed back. She showed up. She learned my language and made me learn hers in return. And somewhere inside all of that, he extended his hand. Noelle crossed to him and took it. She became the reason I would charter a flight through any storm, Jun Seo said. His voice rough at the edges, in a way she had worked an entire year to earn. She became the reason I know I am capable of more than I thought I was. She became the thing I choose every single morning, not because a contract requires it, but because I cannot imagine choosing anything else. His hand tightened around hers. I love you, Noelle, in front of all of you. Without qualifications or carefully negotiated terms, or any of the careful distance I spent years building. The room erupted. Noelle didn't hear it. She was looking at the man who had once barely glanced at her over breakfast, whose eyes were now full of something she had spent a year earning the right to see. And she thought, this is what happens when two people refuse the story they were handed and decide to write a better one. She kissed him. In front of every camera, every socialite, every whisper that had long since transformed from scandal into something that looked, unmistakably, like awe. And Yoojun Seo kissed her back like there was no audience, no arrangement, no carefully maintained management of appearances, like there was only her. If Noelle and Jun Seo's story broke you open in the best possible way, smash that like button and subscribe right now, because there is so much more where this came from. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it the knife scene? The Tokyo flight? The gala confession? The kitchen argument? Tell me. I read every single one, and your comments are what keep me writing these stories. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because sometimes the coldest arrangements produce the hottest fire. And sometimes the love you never asked for becomes the one love you cannot live without. See you in the next one.